Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard. Along with me today is Scott Reynolds to talk about the draft, the upcoming draft for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and whether this team will add another weapon to the arsenal. Scott, pretty exciting show whenever we get to talk offensive skill players in the Bucs.
Yeah, we go from talking with Scotty Miller, wide receiver from the Buccaneers, last night at the Mill. Thanks for watching that show. Already a big viewership for that. And that was fun, right? Hearing from an actual Buccaneer wide receiver. So let's talk about some guys that might join him today. Mm-hmm. As crazy as it sounds, remember, John, this is the year the Bucs can draft anybody they want to, because they're drafting for want rather than need. If they want to add another wide receiver, an explosive playmaker, they can do so.
Yep.
Whether they re-sign Antonio Brown or not, it doesn't matter, because this team, you can always replace a Justin Watson, a Jadon Mickens at the end of the roster with this rookie, and then watch this rookie go up the ranks through the years, through the depth chart. So I'm excited. Also, at the tight end position, John, the Tampa Bay position is as stacked as you're going to find at tight end as you will across the league. And Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, it's a nice 1-2 punch. What do they have in common? They're only under contract through 2021. Cam Brate will turn 30 July 3rd. Happy early birthday, Cam. But the problem is he's making over $6 million. That's a little pricey for a third-string tight end. So there's no guarantee that any of those tight ends, John, will be on the roster come next year. So they could be in the market for another tight end to, again, start on the depth chart low, but then move up the ranks as the years progress.
Yeah, definitely possible. But before we talk about any of that, we're going to talk about Jason Licht and his press conference from yesterday and some of the takeaways we have from that a little bit. Just touch on some things yesterday, because we were out at the Mill and we were talking to Scotty Miller. And so we want to make sure we touch on that and we're able to go over all the different things that Jason had to say. But before we do any of that, Scott, we've got to give a shout out, as we always do, to our friends over at Celsius.
John, our great friends at Celsius, and again, I've had the creamsicle today.
I've got the wild berry. Our friends over at Celsius were out at the Mill last night, and they remembered that I loved it, and so Matt had a bunch in his car, and he gave them to me, and I am
damn it, should have got some from Matt, because that's a hard to find flavor.
It's true.
I might have to go on pewterreport.com, John, to click on those Celsius banners, take me to Amazon, where I can buy some of that wild berry in bulk and save money. It gets shipped right to the house. It's awful convenient. But, John, the cool thing about Celsius is not just the fact that they've got this great, awesome energy drink that doesn't have any crash because there's no sugar in it. The great thing about it is they've got a special promo, very similar to the promo that we ran a couple of months ago. And it's a contest. You can win an autographed Scotty Miller football and a 1-month supply of your favorite Celsius flavor.
Wow.
Now there's going to be 10 winners, but only one grand prize winner. The other winners, you're going to get the 1-month supply of your favorite Celsius flavor, but the grand prize winner is going to get both the autographed Scotty Miller football. You can see him right there autographing it at the Mill last night. In addition to your favorite flavor of Celsius. Here's how to enter to win. This will take literally about 30 seconds of your time, people, and you go ahead and do it. Subscribe to Pewter Report TV on YouTube. Boom, easy. Follow Celsius Official on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Again, super easy. Follow Scotty Miller. That's at MillerTime, 3 underscores, and then his number 10 on Twitter or Instagram. Then once you do those, screenshot those image proofs of your subscription to Pewter Report on YouTube and those social media follows of Celsius Official and Scotty Miller, and then submit them to celsius.com/Pewter. That's it.
Right. And if you go to that celsius.com/Pewter, it'll take you right to like a cool little format that has all this stuff like real easy. You fill it out quick, boom, boom, you're done. it only takes a minute, even though it seems like a couple steps there. The way they've laid it out on their site, that if you follow that /pewter address, is real simple, real easy. It's great stuff. So another great promotion by Celsius. Obviously, Scotty Miller, big Celsius drinkers. He was telling us on the show, giving us his favorite flavors yesterday. So make sure you go back and listen to that. I don't know if you've been on social media much today, Scott, but I have been getting called out by people on social media, and Long Lost Glazer wants to bring it to the chat. I have to call out John for standing on his tippy toes for the Pewter Report group photo with Scotty. Not a good look, John. This is especially humorous to me because I am 6'3", standing flat on my
listen,
feet.
Shorty.
So I don't really need the extra height. But in the picture, I really felt like you and Scotty who are obviously shorter than me, were kind of blocking me a little bit. So I wanted to make sure I was clear of your, and so I did stand on my tiptoes. And of course, social media found the photo, found my tiptoes, and there are many zoomed in pictures of my shoes on social media right now, calling me out for that.
Couldn't be satisfied with 6'3", John. Had to get to 6'4", didn't you? Right?
Yeah, that's right. Trying to get 6'4", 6'5". You know,
I'm 6 feet tall with shoes on and standing straight up. I mean, I'm really 5'11" 3/4, but I round up.
Oh, you got to round up. Yeah, you got to round up. Yeah. 6'2" and 7/8" over here. So I know what you mean. All right. So Jason Light yesterday, Scott, he said a lot of things. Jason Light's always an insightful. Whenever we get to talk to him, I always like it because not that he gives us too much or is irresponsible with what he says, but he will literally say stuff. Like he was honest about this draft class not being an amazing class in his opinion, like especially on the defensive side. He said it's more tilted to the offensive side in his opinion. Doesn't mean there won't be any defensive prospects he likes, but it definitely feels like he is of the opinion that this class is an offensive heavy class. And I wonder if that means something for the first round pick, where the cream of the crop might still be there.
Maybe. In my mind, from the limited intel we've gathered, I can see the Buccaneers doing one of three things with the 32nd pick. And
this will be good.
I think they're going to stay at 32 because I think the team does see some value in that fifth-year option. And if you trade back, you're acquiring more picks later in the draft. And I just don't think that this team wants to stockpile picks this year. Now, if it's one of those things where a team calls and says, hey, if you move back into the second round, take our second round pick, we'll give you a next year's first rounder or something like that, then you got to do it. It's not going to happen, though, because no player is worth the 32nd overall pick that's going to amount to a first round pick next year and a second round pick this year. So I don't see that happening necessarily unless they get a second round pick this year and then a second round pick the next year, unless it's really worth Jason Light's while to move back. And then it depends on how far. So I can see outside linebacker, getting an edge rusher, someone to get into that mix, because I don't have a tremendous amount of confidence that Anthony Nelson is going to be anything more than a poor man's Carl Nassib in terms of sack production. What I mean,
he's your fourth guy. He's your special teamer, run stuffer. He can do the bare minimum if he has to start, but he's never going to be an impact.
But right now he's number 3, John, and that's not good enough. Right. Cam Gill, he's got a little bit of juice. Special teamer, had half a sack in the Super Bowl, but still so much of an unknown. And these rookies last year, with the exception of Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr., they really missed out on having that preseason to really develop and get all the reps that they need to really ascend in the offense or defense. So I think outside linebacker, I think running back still. And really what I mean by running back is if there's a hope and a prayer that either Travis Etienne or Najee Harris falls to number 32, then I think that player's in play. And then really, if it's not those two guys, then how much do the Buccaneers like Javonte Williams, who's the third running back in this draft class and kind of a fringe late first round, early second round guy? I just hate to see him go to the Falcons in the top of the second round, because I think they need a running back, and I would not want to face this guy twice a year.
The Falcons adding Kyle Pitts at 4 and Javonte Williams in the top of the second to go with Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst, Matt Ryan, and an offensive line that'll be full of first rounders. They have underachieved for sure. But
you better score a bunch of points when you play the Falcons, because they're going to score a bunch of points with that type of.
Thankfully, their defense is going to be rough no matter what they do in this draft, probably. But.
They need to draft defense, but watch them draft offense like that. But the other thing is I can see interior offensive line, right? If and John, you and I were actually talking about this. We're on the same wavelength. If there's a player that the Buccaneers are going to trade up for, and they're not going to go crazy, they're not going to jump up into the top 10 or into the top 15, But Tevin Jenkins, see, it's not just you and I, John. It's
Garrett was
Garrett
all
Washington
over it.
too.
Right.
He's all over it. Tevin Jenkins, the offensive tackle who can really play guard too, and I think be a fantastic guard. Watched him at Oklahoma State. The guy is a people mover. Started watching Chuba Hubbard back in 2019, and of course, when you're watching the running back, you got to watch the offensive line because somebody up front's doing something. Right? To have those guys, and I got to go back and I got to watch North Carolina footage. For next year's draft, because to have 2,000-yard rushers, there's got to be some people movers up front in North Carolina that I need to zoom in on. But Tevin Jenkins is a guy I think they can move up for. But the interior offensive line, we had Landon Dickerson in our last mock, John, at the number 32 spot. I think he's still in play.
Yep.
And if you have a guy that slips a little bit, and if Jenkins gets to 25 or so, I could see the Bucs maybe make a move up to get him.
Yeah,
so
I think I'd be surprised.
Running back, interior line. I think one of those three positions will be the Bucs pick.
I agree with you on edge and offensive line. I don't know that I see with running back, but I do hear your argument for it. I don't know. I'm all over the place on that one. I also think strongly that Najee Harris and Travis Etienne will be off the board.
I think they're going to be gone too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
and then it's Javonte Williams. And how much do you like Javonte if you're the Buccaneers compared to the other players still on the board? I think that's what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, and the Tevin Jenkins thing's interesting, and Garrett brings it up obviously here too. But I just don't think he's going to be there at 20. Let alone
I agree.
Let alone 25.
He's really good.
Yeah, he's really good, and I know there's a number of teams in the teens that like him. So
and you know what's funny, John, is I forgot who wrote it on Twitter, and I'm not going to bash him. I'm not going to name him, but you always hear about these, from the draftniks, from the national guys that say, he's rising up the board. He's a late rise. No, he's been there.
Yeah.
It's just the media guys that are finding out about it.
Yeah. Right. Which is
these NFL teams, they've known, for a long time. There really isn't many late risers. Right. If anything, there's late fallers because of medicals, because of character issues from Zoom, things like that. I mean, I don't believe in the late riser theory at all.
Right. Now, I completely agree with you for sure. If you're thinking about that pick at 32, the edge rusher, and I see the offensive line as possibilities. That's where I can't imagine right now, if I had to guess, picking a position that wasn't either of those two. But you never know who's going to be there on the board at that point in time. You never know where the runs are going to happen, especially at positions that are key positions like that. I mean, we talked about offensive line. The trick is not going to be whether they want to select one at 32. The trick is going to be, is somebody there worth selecting, or do they feel like moving down is an option? But you said they might not feel like they have enough roster spots, and Jason was honest about that too. I thought it was interesting that Jason was very clear the fact that this is not a very good defensive tackle class. Yeah. You've heard several GMs now around the league say that. You've heard anonymous sources, the NFL team scout or team executive or general manager, whatever it is, anonymously say to people in the media, it's the worst defensive tackle class they've ever seen. Daniel Jeremiah said worst defensive tackle class he's ever seen. I've said that. Bad. I've been doing it, 8 or 9 years. I mean, it's brutal. And most of the best players are third-round grades to me. I think that's really where you're going to find the cream of your that's where you're going to find the talent in this class if you're drafting then. So almost takes it off the table early. And then Jason said they thought the defensive tackle class was so bad, Scott, it went into their decision to bring back Rakeem Nunez-Roches and Steve McClendon, obviously Ndamukong Suh as well, keep Will Golston around. So this is clearly, and he said straight up, we feel comfortable with our group going into the season. Doesn't mean they won't draft somebody at some point, but after hearing him say that, I think I'd be surprised if it were the first 3 rounds. Definitely the first 2 rounds. I don't think you'll see a D tackle to the Bucs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, if Levi Onwuzurike is there at 64, I think maybe they take a flyer on him in the second round. But otherwise, you're looking probably like late day 3, like Kyrus Tonga, or someone like that.
Jason Marshall,
he's Jonathan Marshall, exactly. I mean, you've seen Jason Light take defensive tackles late, whether it was Khalil Davis last year, whether it was Stevie Tuikulabatu, whether it was Terry Beckner Jr. Those were 6th and 7th round picks for the Buccaneers. So Jason's not opposed to taking a defensive tackle late, and that could be the case.
Right. Garrett wants to know where we think Joe Tryon will go. He's all over the map with them first round to third round. You might have to check back with us on Sunday.
Actually, read the SR's Fab 5 tomorrow.
Or read that. Okay, there we go. You don't even have to wait.
I talked to Jimmy Lake good friend of mine, head coach out at Washington, used to be the Bucs defensive backs coach. Known Jimmy a long time, and got some good intel from Jimmy Lake about Joe Tryon and also Levi Onwuzurike. So check out tomorrow's SR's Fab 5. If you're watching this on Thursday, it's Friday.
Right. Think you'll go in the first round, though, Garrett. I'll tell you that right now.
Yep.
Could the Bucs pick Trask at 32? You want to see us go ballistic on the live show? You want to see us go ballistic on the live show, Scott? We'll go crazy on the live show if they take Trask at 32.
Yeah, I could almost stomach the notion of Kellen Mond at 32 before Trask, and I like Trask. I've got nothing against Trask, but it just, I mean, he's limited athletically. He's not the 32nd best player in the draft, and it would go against everything Jason and Bruce have been saying, which is take the best player available. He's not the best player available at 32 by any means.
Yeah, there's no chance they take him at 32. I don't want them to take him at all because I don't think Trask is very good, frankly. I've watched a lot more Rays recently, and I'm not a big fan. I'd rather have Mond or Davis Mills, and I'm not really that big fan of either of those guys too. Although, yes, I will never be able to fully quit Kellen Mond. Just is the way that it is. Long Lost Glazer says people are trying to compare Joe Tryon to Marcus Davenport from an athletic standpoint. Valid. I would have to look at their testing numbers to tell you that part of it. I think Joe Tryon is like kind of an unorthodox athlete right now. He's not necessarily smooth, but he is athletic in certain things that he does. I don't think he's like a polished athlete. So his athleticism kind of only appears in like glimpses here and there. It's not like a prolonged, you can see like it's not very smooth, it's not very refined in terms of functional movement at his position. So yeah, he's quick and he can change directions, and I like that about him. I don't think he's an elite athlete, but I think he's a good athlete, and he has great size, and teams love his mindset and his physicality. You guys know I'm not the biggest Joe Tryon fan from his tape. I watch more games. I've warmed up to him a little bit more. I have a 3rd round grade on him. I'm probably only going to have 13 first round grades maybe, Scott, and probably
and you're probably not
20
alone.
Second round grades.
You're probably not alone,
right?
In that this year. And when I say that, I don't mean just draft nicks. I mean NFL teams probably have about the same. It's not a great draft overall, and I think that when you're out there in the Pac-12, and I know Tryon and Onwuzurike both opted out, but even the guys that stayed in. They got such a late start, John. There was only, 5 games in the Pac-12 this year? I mean, compared to a full slate of games in the SEC and the Big 12, it's just there's more games to evaluate from guys in those conferences. And, we'll see where Tryon goes. It'll be interesting. He's a bit of a bull in the China shop. He's a relentless guy. He plays hard, and he's pretty serious about football. So,
yeah, I know some people that work in that conference, and they honestly they're kind of surprised though that he other teams not at Washington, but other teams in that and they're definitely kind of surprised that he's rising up the way that he is. They get it from the physical athletic standpoint to a degree, but they never really saw him as that type of player in college. Now, granted, it's a year removed from the last time they had to deal with him, and recency bias is a very real thing.
Yeah, so. and even the fact that Tryon didn't really light it up until the second half of his sophomore season. He did have 3 multiple sack games. I think Utah, Washington State, and there was another game as well. But he did prove he could get sacks in bunches. And I think that's something that you want to see from an elite pass rusher. It's not just, okay, well, can you get there once per game? But are you a guy that can kind of take over a game or be constantly disruptive and make more than one play a game? Because a sack, as great as it is just one play. And this is a guy that I think the light bulb came on over the second half of his sophomore season, and the arrow was pointing up. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see that junior season because COVID-19.
Right. Somebody, Kevin says Elijah Moore. We'll segue into our wide receiver talk now. Kevin says Elijah Moore wouldn't be a bad pick at 32. I kind of agree with that, even though I know we've talked about this at length already with the Bucs wide receiver prototypes. He would be definitely under kind of what we see for them when they select wide receivers. They typically are looking at size as one of their big factors. They're looking at speed. I mean, he has the speed. Yeah. He's not the biggest guy for sure, but at the same time, Scott, man, he's so talented and he's so good at getting open, and he's got speed to be able to win deep. And I know he's not going to be the slot that they really want. So then the question really doesn't it become, could Elijah Moore play outside? Obviously, Scotty Miller, a smaller receiver who plays outside in the NFL. I know it's early in the draft, but we're throwing names out there, and we've talked a little bit about some of the guys that we think are most likely to the Bucs. If Elijah Moore's there, I mean, could this be one of the guys they might go outside of their prototype for? Is this a year where they could do that?
They can do anything. We've discussed that, but I don't know if you want to, though. This is a guy that's under 6 feet tall, that is fast, but he's kind of a Scotty Miller clone. And you already have that one type on your team in Scotty Miller, and you have a hard enough time getting him reps. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want a carbon copy of somebody else at the wide receiver position. And then is he going to help you on special teams? That's the other thing. Where Justin Watson helps out, and Justin Watson is not going to be an offensive guy in this league, and probably won't be in Tampa past this year. But he's 6'3", about 215 pounds, and he's fast and he's big and he makes tackles on special teams. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not going to play offense, but for a handful of plays, and if you're on number 4, 5, or 6 on the depth chart at wide receiver, you got to play on teams. And that's exactly what Tyler Johnson did last year. He was a factor in special teams. Same with Justin Watson. I don't see, with his body size, Elijah Moore being a guy big enough to really run down there and cover kicks and punts.
Yeah, that is definitely a consideration. Or they carry more wideouts. I don't know. I mean, he's so good that I would consider him. But you're right. It's not like this seamless fit. You'd have to kind of, I mean, he played 108 snaps out wide last year, and he played most of his snaps in the slot. The year before, though, he had played almost every snap in the slot. So he moved closer to playing in more out wide. He got a good chunk of snaps out wide, obviously in a very competitive conference with a ton of tough corners. He produced for the last couple of years, at a high level. He really, I mean, his ability to get open in almost every matchup all the time without great quarterback play, to be able to be productive, to consistently make an impact. He has ball skills for a smaller guy that you don't always see. So I am a huge Elijah Moore fan. I don't think he's going to be a Buc.
I like him. I just don't like him in Tampa.
Right. I would consider him. His athletic testing, elite, by the way, 4.35 40. His shuttles and 3-cone were unreal. Not that that's even that big of a deal, but vertical jump 36 inches. He 5'9", 178, though. I mean, at the end of the day, he's not a big dude. There's no question about it. Does play big, for sure. Play strong. He is about as tough gets. He'll take a hit, hang on to the football. I think the Bucs will love that about him. The question becomes, he'd be a totally different type of player. Now, I'll say this, Scott. I don't think they're going to take him, even though I would consider him. I think if they were saying, yeah, we'll go away from our prototype, he is more likely to be a Buc. Elijah Moore is more likely to be a Buc than Kadarius Toney, or than I will even say Amari Rodgers, or than Rondale Moore. Like, I think all those guys. Yeah. I'm trying to think Tutu Atwell, if you want to throw him in there, although he's probably not even going to get drafted. But
I know that Kadarius Toney's got some fans in the building. So
he's got some fans, but I'm just willing to bet that Elijah Moore's just because of the way
number 32, though, and there's been some questions about his medicals as of late, but Terrace Marshall, this is an interesting player. He was our Bucs best bet at wide receiver.
Yeah.
For the early rounds. And I think that he's probably a second round pick, but again, at number 32, you're getting a second round player, So it was interesting because he was kind of the third fiddle at LSU during his sophomore year. And obviously Jamar Chase, being the dominant player at LSU. But this was a guy, once Chase was gone, once Justin Jefferson was gone, he really got the opportunity last year to kind of be the man at the wide receiver position. Of course, he didn't have Joe Burrow throwing him the ball, but a 15.2 yard average, 48 catches, 731 yards, only played in 7 games, and then opted out for the last part of the season at LSU. And he did it right before the Alabama game, which really kind of ticked some scouts off because they really wanted to see him against Surtain and the Alabama defense. But 10 touchdowns last year in just 7 games, and he had 13 touchdowns, John, the year prior to that. So Terrace Marshall, the thing that you have to like about him is he's got size. He's kind of been compared a little bit to Chris Godwin in the fact that he's about 6'2", 205, runs a 4.4 40, and he brings a lot to the table. He's maybe not the dominant blocker that Chris Godwin is right now.
Definitely not.
but
Terrace Marshall trying to block is hilarious right now.
Yeah, but I think a lot of blocking is want to, And when you're a wide receiver at LSU, right, and you're catching 10 touchdowns a season, you kind of have a mindset of, well, I'm going to catch the ball rather than block. But I think he's got the size to do that. And you see him run through tackles. He has a physical presence. Maybe he doesn't show up in the run game right now, but he's certainly not shy about contact. He will run into, through, and around defenders with that combination of size and speed. So that might be an interesting guy at number 32.
Yeah, I mean, definitely
wide receiver.
Definitely their prototype. You and I have agreed pretty easily that if they go wide receiver there, and you're asking us, okay, who are they going to take? It'd be him. We are a little bit assuming Rashad Bateman will be off the board at this point in time. We'll touch on him in a second for people who haven't heard us talk about that scenario. But to me, the thing with Terrace Marshall, Scott, is all about development. Like I like him. Some people think he's like a top 20 lock in this class. Like that's the type of player that he is. And maybe in this class, I don't know. He's a risk, though. I think we just need to say he's a risk. Like he doesn't run really good routes right now. Very inconsistent in terms of timing and just when he gets out of his breaks. And he looks like he's kind of just running around being an athlete right now. His ball skills are good, but he's an athlete. A ton of passes. Yeah, I mean, he dropped Pro Football Focus, who's pretty lenient on drops. They have him with 7 drops and 55 catchable balls this past season. That's not very good at all. So you have the reliableness, that the polish. Getting off press, he didn't really play on the outside much this past year. A year ago he did. But this past year he took Justin Jefferson's role, was used heavily in the slot. I like him for sure. I don't think he's as good as Elijah Moore. I recognize that their prototype for the Bucs, it may be just a different type of receiver completely. Definitely a good player, but it's very much going to depend on what team does with him moving forward. Is he ready for that type of is he ready for the NFL to be the profession for him, basically? Putting in that kind of time technically.
Yeah, that's definitely a good,
and then the injuries,
a good way to describe it. Yeah.
I don't, there was reports that Daniel Jeremiah, I think, said on his conference call yesterday that his injuries, for people who don't know, injuries he suffered, leg injuries, I think, early in his college career and late in high school. There's some red flags came up on those for teams at the medical rechecks or I guess the medical checks in India or wherever they're doing it.
Right. And sometimes that, you have an injury that on the X-ray or on the MRI, it looks like it may not be fully healed, yet the player went out there and played and performed. And that's what causes teams to have to kind of weigh that a little bit. They have to really gauge the risk, right? And say, okay, well, is he more likely to have this injury recur? Or do you look at it and say, well, he played through it and he played fine and didn't miss any practices according to the coaches and just something he's dealt with. And, it is what it is. So that's just something to maybe give some teams some pause. But another wide receiver that I like while we're talking about undersized, fast guys that do have some injury concerns is Marquez Stevenson. This guy right here.
Okay. So we're going into day 3 now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're just talking wide receivers in general.
Right. Okay.
And I think that when you're looking at a guy that can help out in special teams, that's a factor, a wide receiver. And if you're not going to run down there and cover kicks and punts, then it might be a thing where, you should return them. And I think Tampa Bay's return game could use some upgrading. Well, this is a player at Houston here who the last 2 years, he returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns and has limited punt return experience. Like he's got 4 punt returns, but the guy was a sensational kick returner at Houston, averaging 26 yards per kick return, averaged 36.3 yards per kick return last year on 4 returns, including a touchdown. He's got the speed and the acceleration to really take the top off of a defense. And he didn't time, John. That was interesting. At his Houston Pro Day, he didn't time. I know there were some people, myself included, that wanted to see him in that 4.3 range. And I tell you what, I don't care what you think of him skipping out on that 40-yard dash. The kid is 4.3 when it comes to the tape. I mean, it's legit. He's an absolute burner. He averaged 15.4 yards per catch. Had a 1,000-yard season. As a sophomore, 9 touchdowns. The next year, 9 touchdowns, 907 yards, averaged 17.4. Only played in 5 games last year. And you mentioned injuries, John. This guy has dealt with some injuries. But when he's healthy and on the field, he's an absolute deep threat. He has got a second gear like any receiver I've seen in this year's class.
He is fast. He's kind of the quintessential difference to me between like a guy who's fast and maybe you could teach him to be like that vertical threat at receiver, but they really he didn't do it that much. I mean, honestly, I think Pro Football Focus has him a 17, 20+ yard catches over 3 years as a starter. So he's very fast, but it was a lot of yards after the catch type of stuff. The other interesting thing about him is kind of goes back to what we talked about before. He's pretty much a slot only guy. The last couple of years, I think the last 2 years, he's 64 snaps total in out wide.
Right.
I mean, total. So he is almost always in the slot too. So it would need to be, like you said, it would be a special teams impact move first. Pretty much replacement of Jaden Mickens type of move.
Tampa Bay, we're drafting him as a kick returner / wide receiver, and then you're kind of getting that value. Okay, now we have another guy like Scotty Miller out there that can really run away from defenses, stretch the field vertically.
Right. And then late in the draft, they're more likely to go away from the size prototype, so we don't get caught up in as much there. But
I'll tell you, we got a couple of big guys we can talk about here.
That's true.
At the wide receiver position, our day 3 guy is a player that has a really cool nickname, Scary Terry. And Florida State fans are kind of split on Tamarian Terry, because this is a player that didn't have a lot of great quarterback play helping him out, right? I mean, we can say that, right? I mean, and
Mark's not going to watch this show, but Mark will understand.
He'll completely understand. He'll be the first one to say that Florida State's quarterback position since Jameis Winston left has really not been ideal, to say the least. But listen, this kid comes with amazing physical traits. A big receiver. Really came out of the gate as a freshman, 35 catches, 744 yards, 8 touchdowns, John, 21.3 yard average. Then the next year, as a sophomore, 60 catches, 1,188 yards. His average fell all the way to 19.8, John. You hate to see it. Just under 20, but 9 touchdowns. Then last year, did not have that third great season that you kind of expected. He was limited to 6 games, had some injuries, 23 catches, 289 yards, 1 touchdown. Really kind of came back down to earth. But boy, that freshman and sophomore season, this kid who's got some freakish size to him, really I think is a player that Tampa Bay might really consider. When you look at the fact he's 6'2", 207, very much like Terrace Marshall in terms of his size, but the 4.44 speed, it shows up, and I think that he's probably even a tick faster than Marshall once he has the ball in his hands. He has that second gear. Marshall's fast right from the get-go, but this kid has got something extra once he has his mitts on the ball.
Yeah, he's made some nice catches too in his career. Now, he can't stop, but he can't start. Those are two big parts of playing wide receiver.
Straight line guy.
Exactly right. It always limit what Tamarian Terry brings to the table to a degree. Now, you were talking about a day 3 guy, so I'm just laying it out there for fans, but we're talking about day 3 guys, people. So we're talking about guys that are they're coming with limitations. That's what they're coming with.
Yeah, they got
to find roles for him. So I do think he's a fit for the prototype the Bucs look for. I do think it would be late in the draft, but definitely has some things that they typically tend to gravitate toward a receiver like that speed. And now the one thing I'll say that doesn't fit the prototype, I've talked about the prototype before, 6'1" to the 205, 210 range is typically what they look for, at least 4.4s in the 40-yard dash, depending on the weight. Like Mike Evans was like 230 pounds, so obviously when he ran a 4.53, that was okay. And then the other thing they look for, though, is the vertical jump, 35. And everybody they've drafted, I think that they drafted 2-play wideout, has had at least a 35.5-inch vertical. Right. He was 33, which is in the 14th percentile for wide receivers. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm throwing it out there for people to think about a little bit at that position. But I do think there's definite tendency they could gravitate toward him on day 3. I wanted to mention one guy we haven't really talked about, Scott, if I can. We haven't talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown at all from USC. Yeah. Now, I don't know whether the team likes him or not. I'm not trying to make a case for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a very unique player, in my opinion. I'm not super enthralled by him. I do think he might be on the board sometime in that round 3 range for who the Bucs are picking.
That's right. When they drafted Chris Godwin.
Yeah. And even it'll be even later this year, right? Because they win the Super Bowl and everything. But he is interesting because he's a big slot right now. Like he plays a lot in the slot as a bigger player. Obviously, that's something that the Bucs do and like in their slots. He is kind of, his family, right? Everybody knows about the St. Brown family. I think the EQ plays for the Packers, and His dad was Mr. Universe, 3 Mr. World titles. He was bodybuilder. So like, it comes from this family that's kind of well known, and he is kind of he's addicted to his craft kind of guy. Like he's driven. Exactly right. He can run all the routes. He's technically sound. I think he's a very mediocre athlete. So that will be he's a little bit under the Bucs size requirement, what they like at the position a little bit, 5'11", 197, but he tested well in certain areas, the 4'5", 140. It's like all just, right underneath where they typically go.
Right.
But yeah, he's kind of a big slot type. I think, I don't know whether he's going to, I don't think he's going to be Chris Godwin, but I think he'd be kind of in that range in the draft, that 3rd round. So if they go offensive line and they go edge in some order in the first 2 picks, and they're sitting pretty at the 3rd round and they're thinking about best player available, I could see there being some interest in him. Maybe. I'm not saying he'd be like, he's obviously not our Bucs best bet or anything,
right?
But a name I thought we should throw out there that we haven't really talked about for the Bucs yet.
I'm going to talk about one more guy, wide receiver. Then we're going to switch gears to tight end. This guy is he's a draft crush of mine, and kind of reminds me a little bit of Josh Pearson, that Jacksonville State undrafted free agent that they signed after the draft last year. And so maybe the Bucs don't have a need for this guy here, but Jonathan Adams from Arkansas State. When you watch the tape on this guy, and I had the unfortunate pleasure of watching the Kansas State-Arkansas State game live, not in person, but on television. Arkansas State rolled into Manhattan and upset Kansas State last year, and Jonathan Adams was a big reason why. 8 catches, 98 yards, 3 touchdowns against my Wildcats. Now, we didn't have the best defense last year, but it didn't matter. This guy was an absolute game wrecker, caught the game-winning touchdown, and we had no answer for this guy all game long. And you see there, he's a big body guy. I believe his measurables are 6'2", 210, not the fleetest of foot, a 4.54 time in the 40-yard dash, but a 39-inch vertical. So, John, you're talking about guys that jump. This guy will win contested catches. He makes the highlight reel catches. He's a threat in the red zone. His production is phenomenal over the last 2 years. 62 catches, 851 yards. By the way,
Scott, tied for first with 15 20-plus yard catches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's a lot.
He's a downfield threat, and he's not the guy that's going to, create separation and get open with his speed, but he'll create separation with his size. He'll out-leap you. He'll out-battle you for the ball. He's got some 32-inch arms, not the longest in the world, but certainly will go up and get the ball. 62 catches, 851 yards, 5 touchdowns in 2019 and 13 games. Last year, 10 games, 79 catches, 1,101 yards, 14-yard average, 12 touchdowns. And he missed the final game of the season with a hip injury. But this kid, what I like about him is you talk about special teams, John. You talk about that on day 3. And this guy is an absolute beast when it comes to blocking downfield. There's not a better blocker at wide receiver than this guy.
Right.
And when I'm saying blocker, I don't mean just like get in front of a guy's way and create that convoy, that escort down the sidelines. I'm talking about knocking guys on their ass repeatedly. And so if I'm looking for a day 3 wide receiver, somebody to go down there and cover kicks and cover punts or block on punt, coverage units, or on I should say on punt teams, this is a guy to consider. Yeah, I like Jonathan Adams a lot.
And because of that reason you mentioned, we're talking about day 3 wide receivers. So I like him because of what you mentioned more than I think Tamorrion Terry or Marquez Stevenson, because I don't think any of those guys will ever develop into regular parts of your wide receiver rotation. Right. But with Adams, you have the potential for 2 things. Special teams contribution, I think, that you don't get with the other guys.
Just like a Justin Watson or a Tyler Johnson.
Correct, yeah. Yep. And you roll situational football. Like as a blocker, certain situations, get them out of the field. You're near the end zone. You're throwing those bubble screens and you need a blocker with Chris, get them on the field in those jump balls in the end zone. You get them on the field in those situations. He could be a decoy, could be isolated.
And you know what? He's got the physicality. You put him in the slot and he plays the Chris Godwin role. He will be your inline blocker, your blocker at the point of attack from the slot. He'll be, your motion guy across the formation into the hole. He can do those things. And so
he gives you a little something. If people are injured, you can at least get a little package of plays around what he can give you on offense. So I like him for those two reasons. One thing I'll say about him, he can't stop and he can't turn. He can start, he can get off the line of scrimmage. He can't stop and he can't turn. I mean, he just can't run routes at all. So I wouldn't even make him. I wouldn't even try. Not that I would try, but he is what he is. He's not, his athletic testing definitely killed my soul.
He's not a fluid athlete. He's a good jumper. He's got a good vertical.
He's great jump, 39-inch vertical. Yeah, he can go up and get it, and he's got the long arms. I mean, no question. But his 4.5 940 definitely hurt my soul a little bit. His agilities were rough too. But
and now the interesting thing is we're going to transition because this is the wide receiver tight end preview, John.
Mm-hmm. And you use the wide receiver tight end guy.
I know. How about that?
Great foresight.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Jacob Harris from UCF in just a second, right? But let's get to our Bucs best bet for the opening round, and this is a guy that I'm late on. This is Tommy Tremble from Notre Dame. John, tell us about Tommy Tremble.
Yeah, I wrote today on Twitter that Tommy Tremble's tight end too, and everybody's like, "Wow, you really like him?" And I'm like, "No, I mean, yeah, but I just can't stand any of the other tight ends in the class."
Yeah, it's not a top heavy class by any means.
Yeah, not like a great player or anything, but what I like about him is his athletic upside here a little bit. He competes at a high level. I think he's intelligent. As a blocker, he finds his targets on the move. He latches. He finishes. He's very tough and physical. He can block already. He does block inline. I think he's probably better on the move than he is inline. He is small for a tight end for sure. I think, what is he, 6'3", 241, something like that. Yeah. But he is a good blocker in space. I see him, again, for the Bucs, I think it's interesting to him is he can line up in the backfield. They don't use a fullback, right? So their tight ends play H-back. It's we've seen Tanner Hudson do it. Obviously, Cam Brate does it. Neither of those guys are very good at it, but that's what they do with them sometimes. Right. Blocking on the move is a big part of playing tight end in the Bucs offense. Almost all your base blocking. One of the reasons why the Bucs offense is so tough for tight ends is your base blocking a lot, a defensive end. Then, by the way, you've got to come across the formation as a split zone, or you've got to step into the backfield and be a lead blocker, or you've got to go into pass protection and block. Yep. So they won't consider people, I don't think, if they can block in the draft. Right. I really don't think they'll look that much at tight end. So
and this guy loves to block, John. He loves it. I mean, he only had 4 touchdown catches at Notre Dame. It all came in 2019. He had 16 catches for 183 yards. I don't think he complained a bit. Last year, 19 catches, 218 yards, no touchdowns, but he just loves to block. It's a one-on-one situation for him. I mean, I know football is a team sport, but man, when he gets locked on to whoever his target is, whether it's a cornerback or a safety on the perimeter or a linebacker at the second level or a defensive end that he's trapping, I mean, it's game over. This guy will absolutely put you on your ass. And I've really grown to appreciate his game. Interesting thing is he's a redshirt sophomore and the size, John, 6'3", 241. But you talk about special teams. Oh my goodness, this guy will be an absolute special teams demon as a rookie.
Right. Oh yeah, and the other thing that is, a lot of Bucs fans I think have asked, what about Pat Freiermuth? Why hasn't he been mentioned as the Bucs guy? And because there was talk even early on in this process, maybe it was before Gronkowski resigned, I can't remember, and when people thought they might lose Cam Brate, whether he could be their first round pick. I mean, I watched like 6. I'm going to be honest. I just don't get the allure with Pat Freiermuth. I don't even have him in the first 3 rounds. I mean, he can block for sure. There's no question. I don't think he's a great blocker, but he can block. I mean, so he'll play. Right. But what does he do that's special? I mean, he's made some tough catches, certainly, but he's dropped a ton of passes. He's not fast at all. He doesn't create separation, not a very good route runner or not a very explosive route runner. So I'm just like, man, and he doesn't do anything after the catch. He just looks like a normal. I just think some of these guys, like one announcer throws a baby Gronk label on you, and you're suddenly a guy. Yeah. Like he didn't even produce that much of
But how much of that was him just wearing number 87? That's
exactly being big and white. I mean, there's really that's what they're going off of. That really is, and so I think that stigma just carries his stock rate. I don't see anything special or unique about his game. He just looks like if he's a low end starter or a tight end 2 for you, great. But the reputation he has right now, that he could go even have a chance of going to the first round, it's crazy to me. Now, Hayden Hurst went in the first round. We've had some bad tight ends go in the first round. Still a mistake, obviously, but I'm not saying he won't go in the first round. I just think I think whoever takes him, he didn't even run. He's hurt. He's not even healthy.
That's right.
I don't understand the allure at all there, man.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And I think too, some other tight ends that might be considered, and I don't see the Buccaneers really taking one before round 3. And I think that Tremble, if he's there in round 3, that might be the selection. But I really think they're looking at some day 3 guys. And again, the tight end position looks great right now. I mean, things can change quickly. Rob Gronkowski, 32 next year. You look at OJ Howard. Can he stay healthy? Is he worth investing a multi-year contract in? He's on the 5th-year option right now, and he's got all the potential in the world, but he hasn't put it all together. Cam Brate, will be 30 this summer and carries a high price tag. Tanner Hudson really hasn't developed. So I think that they could be looking down the road at tight end, and there could be a couple of day 3 guys that are really interesting. Let's talk about our Bucs best bet for day 3. It's this guy right here, Jacob Harris.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end, John? He's 6'5", 219. He is a willing blocker. The UCF coaches rave about his ability to block. He gets the job done despite the lack of size. Now, at the collegiate level, going against the Cincinnatis and the Houstons and stuff, that's one thing. Going against Cam Jordan, right, in New Orleans at 219 pounds, that's something else.
That's a big challenge.
But the interesting thing is, yeah, you're right, it is. But the interesting thing about this kid is it just the measurables are off the charts. The production, catching the ball, is off the charts. This is a Palm Harbor native that's a little bit older, right? He's 24 years old, and he ran a blazing time in the 40-yard dash, 4.39. Some scouts a 4.4 flat. Jumped out of the gym, a 40.5-inch vertical, an 11.1 broad jump, and again 6'5", 219 pounds. He's actually the same size, actually probably a little bit lighter than Mike Evans was coming out of Texas A&M, and he is a whole 1/10 of a second faster. Evans was a 4.5.
Well, pro day time.
True, pro day, yeah.
Pro day time.
Still, I think he's faster than Mike Evans.
Yeah.
And so is he a big wide receiver? You can see the leaping ability in his picture right here. And let's just talk about the production. Then I'll let you get into the hard dive on him. 19 catches, 448 yards, a 23.6-yard average with 1 touchdown for the Knights in 2019. Then last year, 30 catches, 539 yards. That's an 18-yard average, and 8 touchdowns. He destroyed USF with 3 touchdowns and 110 yards on a couple of catches. So this guy's got a 20.1-yard average. We know that Bruce Arians loves the vertical aspect, right? We know that he loves guys that can get down the field and stretch the defense. And this is an interesting cat, John.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love him as a day 3 pick. I mean, there's a ceiling there that the other guys don't have. We talked about that with Terry and Stevenson and those guys. I will say this. I think I'm fully in support of us cheating on this, but we definitely cheated on the Bucs best bet, and I'm glad that we did. Jacob Harris will be a wide receiver for the Bucs. Yeah, because of what that offense asks their tight ends to do. But he's a lot of what they look for. He really is. I mean, in terms of character, the way they talk about him, the way they talk about his commitment to the craft.
Special teams, too. He's a special teams ace for them, had 7 tackles on special teams this past year.
Yep.
So he'll do the dirty work.
Right. It's exact type of player that they would target, type of receiver that they would target in terms of skill set and athletic ability. Paris ever becomes like a stud wide receiver for this team or plays, 15, 20 snaps a game even. But the special teams impact, the blocking impact again, and there's upside there that, like I said, I don't think the other guys have much chance of being ever like a full-time control. We don't know. Jacob Harris has barely played football. He was a soccer player. Like, he's this crazy athlete. There's a little bit of Darren Waller to him. I don't know. You know, I'm not saying he is.
We're talking about Jonathan Adams down there in the red zone package. You put this guy opposite, Mike Evans with Chris Godwin in the slot. Right. I mean,
So whoever takes this guy on day 3, whatever team, everybody's going to be excited about it. It doesn't mean he'll be good. I mean, but I think he'll at least contribute. If he was just an athlete, I would be more against it. The fact that he will block, the fact that he loves the game, that he works his tail off, and he loves special teams, that's big. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes round 4 because of those things.
I agree.
And the Bucs are the kind of team, by the way, Scott, that can take the luxury of taking
That's
him
right.
in round 4 and develop.
That's right. A couple other interesting, tight ends. There's this cat right here, Hunter Long. He's more of that classic Y tight end. He's got size at 6'5". Let's see, 6'5", 251 pounds. So he's a bigger guy that can do that inline blocking that Jacob Long couldn't do. And there's the production there too. I mean, listen, he caught passes from one of my favorite quarterbacks, Phil Jerkovic. I call him the Jerk, right? Boston College's Phil Jerkovic.
Future Buck great.
Future Buck great, yeah, right? I mean, you're talking 28 catches, 509 yards. It's an 18.2 yard average.
Wow. Led
Boston College in receiving yards. And that was in 2019, caught 2 touchdowns. And then a little bit more of a marked man last year. The stretch the field wasn't so much there with the 12.0 average, 57 catches, though, 685 yards. He was the main weapon there for the Golden Eagles, 5 touchdowns. He's a player that Johnny's averaged just under 15 yards per catch in his career with 9 touchdowns. So he can do it all from red zone to stretching the field a little bit on those vertical routes down the middle. And he's also got the size to be an inline blocker. And, that's not Cameron Brate's forte. That's not Tanner Hudson's forte. It's a big reason why they wanted to get Gronkowski, John, not just because he's Gronk catching the ball and Gronk spike. It's also because this guy can be a factor when it comes to blocking.
Yeah, for sure. He's very well-rounded. I'll put it that way. If you're in the 3rd round range, and I mean, he's definitely somebody that's on your radar in the 3rd and 4th rounds, I think, if nobody's taken him. And so, I tend to think the Bucs are not going to prioritize tight end. I agree. We might see a Tremble type.
Yep.
Right. We may see a Jacob Harris type late in the draft. I know there's some guys you want to bring up and maybe talk about a little bit too that they could target, but I tend to think Gronkowski or O.J. Howard or maybe both, depending on what kind of year it is, will be back for at least one more year next year. So we'll see kind of what they do with that position. But, if Hunter Long is the kind of guy that you could bring in and he could do some things for you, I'm going to finish his tape study this weekend, I think, to get kind of a better feel for him because I've only seen a little bit here and there. But he is like across the board, just kind of average. Yeah. And that was at the college level. And so, I don't know what what's his thing, right? What's his thing? So you guys got to take him in the right round.
Right. Okay. Well, if we're talking about things, let's talk about Kenny Yeboah. He's another draft crush of mine from Ole Miss, right? And boy, did he love when Lane Kiffin got to town, right? Because this was a guy that played at Temple. So keep that in mind. This was a Temple guy up until last year when he was a grad transfer to Ole Miss. So he's probably been on Bruce Arians' radar for some time. The thing about Yeboah that's interesting is he's not physically overwhelming in terms of his size, 6'3", just under 6'4", 250. But man, this kid's got some wheels, right? I mean, he didn't run a blazing time. Actually, he strained his hamstring on his 40-yard dash. So, but you look at the tape and you look at the stat sheet on this kid. He averaged 19.4 yards per catch at Ole Miss in his lone season there playing for Kiffin. 6 touchdowns, 27 catches, 524 yards. And he was a pretty good producer at Temple too. 12.3 yard average, 233 yards, 5 touchdowns the year prior. So, he's definitely a player that can help you stretch the field a little bit and get vertical. And that's one thing that Bruce Arians likes. The last tight end that I'll talk about is Briley Moore, a guy that I watched at K-State a little bit, but he's not really a true K-Stater, John. He went to Northern Iowa with my guy Ellerson Smith and Spencer Brown, the big tight ends. And Northern Iowa really has a chance to put a couple of guys into the draft this year. Thing about Briley Moore in his 1 year at K-State, he did get hurt, but he was still a big-time producer in the passing game. Only played 9 games, 22 catches, 338 yards, a 15.4 yard average, and 3 touchdowns. And you go back at his Northern Iowa, his last season there, 39 catches, 536 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a 32-yard touchdown against Iowa, playing against some better competition there. He's a player that, 7th round, you're looking for a guy that can come in. He's got decent size. About 6'3", 250 pounds, can help you in special teams. He's a hard worker. I wouldn't be surprised at all, John, if in the last 2 rounds they end up taking a tight end. if it's not Jacob Harris a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, it's he is kind of a guy that I was asking you about just the other day at Bradley Moore, and I was like, hey, this Kansas State guy, we haven't talked about him at all. What's going on? And
I'm not going to get on the table for him. I'm not lobbying for him.
That's what I was going to say.
Would I mind seeing another Wildcat in Tampa Bay? It has to be the right one.
How many are there now?
None right now.
None. I was going to say, and there was a time where they've had a
time. Yeah, we had. Let's see. I was just telling this with Mark Cook the other day. When I first got to Tampa, Elijah Alexander and Roderick Green, who I went to K-State with, those guys were down here. And then you had Martin Gramatica and Darnell McDonald, the wide receiver, get drafted by the Bucs in '99. I actually forgot about Aaron Lockett. They call him the Rocket. Kevin's cousin.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. So Aaron Lockett, Kevin's cousin, that would be Tyler's uncle.
Right.
Tyler's uncle. And then you had, of course, Josh Freeman. We all remember Josh Freeman. So there's been a couple K-Staters, not a stellar group outside of Gramatica, really.
Well, it's funny because you were kind of like, I don't know about Bradley Moore. I mean, like he's fine, like wouldn't hate it.
I mean,
but then I looked at some of the Dane Brugler and PFF. They both think like he should be drafted. Like, I mean, round, Bradley Moore, PFF has him 5th round grade. They gave him. They like him. They say animal in the run game, thrives in the trenches.
He is. He's good.
That's a potential buck. I mean, right?
Listen, I'm not going to be opposed to them drafting Bradley Moore. I'm not. Okay, but
for the guy that I'm going to stand on the table for Bradley Moore. I've not one snap of him play football. I haven't seen one snap.
You'll be our honorary Wildcat on the program, John.
Did you see his pro day?
Yeah, he had a good pro day, right?
He had 4.64 40, 38-inch vertical.
He's a good athlete.
123-inch broad, 90th percentile broad, and 91st vertical. 26 reps on the bench, ran a 4.64.
Yep.
250 pounds. I'm drafting him. I don't even need to see the tape.
I don't want to be a Wildcat shill. That's the whole thing. There's been other players that I've liked from Kansas State that I've lobbied for.
I know.
Tyler Lockett was one of them, right? Listen,
I'll carry this mantle for you. I'm gonna watch him. I'm gonna watch him.
Okay, yeah, I'm not, I'm not upset that they drafted Ali Marpet instead of Tyler Lockett, but it was down to those two guys, and they made the right choice in Marpet. But Tyler Lockett's had a really good career out there at Seattle, so
that's true. Go back and change our Bucs best bets though to Bradley Moore.
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you one thing. We had a great time last night at the Mill. It was great seeing our friends from Celsius there, Matt and Elliot. That was fun. It was great meeting Jenna Miller, Scotty's new bride. That was awesome. It was also great to meet Briar Greaves, John, because I've talked with Briar on the phone. Every time I've emailed him, I get an email back instantly from Briar or Sam, because that's the kind of customer service that Briar Greaves will give you. And of course, what I'm talking about is BriarGreavesInsurance.com. That's the place to go if you need commercial property insurance, if you need homeowners insurance, boaters insurance, life insurance, automobile insurance. Only one place to turn, Briar Greaves. And listen, there's been rate increases in the state of Florida. Why? Because of all of those natural disasters and floods and fires and stuff. It's really kind of wrecked the insurance industry with all those calamities and catastrophes. Briar Greaves will make sure that you're getting the best rate possible and that you get the proper amount of insurance, which I didn't have until I went to Briar Greaves. So the folks at Briar Greaves, big Bucs fans, big sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast. So, do what I did. Give them your business. At least give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. And let them shop your policy and see if they can get you the best rate possible. Visit BriarGreavesInsurance.com.
Yep, Briar Greaves is where you go for insurance, Scott, and Locker Room is where you go for when you want to experience the changing place for live audio conversations about the takes, rumors, news, and teams you care about. React to sports news as it happens, gather all your friends and watch parties for the biggest games, rep your favorite teams, and find your community. Better Sports Talk is just a tap away. Download on the Apple App Store and join the conversation. I think tonight, if they step up, Taylor and Matt are supposed to be having a show on Locker Room.
There we
tonight.
go.
They're supposed to be talking. So definitely jump in there if you get the invite. But if you're not on there, download Locker Room, follow Pewter Report, and we jump on there. We have every Tuesday night I'm on there, and we have some great conversations. We just had awesome conversations, X's and O's stuff. We talk about player usage. It's intricate, it's detailed, and I'm not going to lie. I'll share some tidbits that I don't share on the podcast.
That's right. That's inside information only in locker room.
Yep, exactly. It's for the diehards. So if you want to join that diehard group, definitely download Locker Room and jump into follow Peter Report and jump into those conversations. You'll get the invites when we go live. So great stuff on the show. The Briley Moore fan club has grown by two. Myself and Alien Mastodon are now in the Briley Moore fan club. We'll get you there, Scott.
Right.
Don't worry.
Interesting name there too, right?
Yeah,
Trevon Grimes.
We've talked about him. We throw big and vertical guy again.
Trevon was actually in our first mock draft, John.
Yeah, that's right.
Our final mock draft is coming out on Sunday.
Yes, our final Bucs 7-round mock draft will come out on Sunday. Yeah. I'll have my big board, my first round grades. My big board will not be as big as it is in past years, just the way that it is this year. And then we'll have my final 32 team mock draft. Well, I guess 2017 or however many pick in the first round. Mock draft will come out next week as well. I think on Wednesday, maybe before the draft on Thursday. And then don't forget, we'll be live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern next week.
Special draft shows.
Yes, our
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, where you get more than just an hour of myself and John Ledyard. Now, the interesting thing is, if you missed the first part of the show, you missed this contest. We're going to tell you about it again. Win an autographed Scotty Miller football and a 1-month supply of your favorite Celsius flavor. Celsius has got one grand prize winner that's going to get both of those, but they've got 9 other winners that can get that 1-month supply of your favorite Celsius flavor. Really simple. Subscribe to Peter Report TV on YouTube. Follow Celsius Official on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Follow Scotty Miller. That's at MillerTime, 3 underscores, then number 10 on Twitter or Instagram. Once you've done those 3 things, screenshot those, give us an image proof of your subscription and those follows, and submit all of those images, plus your name and email address, to Celsius.com/Peter. You'll be automatically entered for a chance to win a 1-month supply of Celsius. And maybe if you're the grand prize winner, John, you get that Scotty Miller autograph football too.
Yeah.
Contest will end May 1st. So you've got a limited time to do this. It's really quick and easy. Help us build our social media following for those great folks at Celsius and Scotty Miller, and also help get our subscriber numbers up at Peter Report. We're over 4,000 right now, thanks to you guys.
Right. Want to remind people too, real quick before we wrap up the show, about our friends over at Playbook Products. Right now, you can get 10% off with the promo code Scotty. If you saw yesterday's show, you saw that we presented Scotty with the wall art. That's Scotty, Scotty, by the way. Yep. You can get 10% off if you go over to Playbook Products. So make sure you check out their stuff. You can get Gronkowski's touchdown against the Chiefs, Scotty's touchdown before the half, which we presented him with some really cool wall art as a courtesy gift from Playbook Products.
Mrs. Miller loved that.
Yes, she did. She loved it. It was so funny. After we carried it out to the deck area after the show, Scott, and Jenna saw it, and she was like, can I take a picture of that? That's so cool. I was like, no, it's yours. We just gave this to Scotty on the show. Like, it's yours. Yeah. And I think she was more excited than he was, honestly. And he was pretty excited. So it was really cool. So yeah, check out Playbook Products, 10% off their products right now. Great gifts, great stuff for your man or woman cave, for sure. Just to add to the fan ensemble of your favorite team, more than just Bucs, more than just football. They've got a lot of stuff going on over there. So check them out for sure. All right, Scott.
What a great week, man. We had a great week of Bucs coverage here on the Peter Report podcast, and we're going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday next week. Get ready for the marathon of Scott and John breaking down all of the Bucs draft news when it happens and previews before it happens.
Yep, absolutely. Going to be a great time. As always, we appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to another edition of the Peter Report podcast. Out.